So excuse the noise. There's a bunch of people that don't realize I'm filming, or they know and they just don't give a about it. So now I don't often bring you good news about the Biden administration. It's been rare. I don't even remember the last time. That's how rare it is. So I'm just gonna give you this, and remember, there's a caveat of, hey, Jason, the minimum wage is not $15 an hour federally, so hey, why not? And you're right, it's because the left didn't do its goddamn job and didn't force the vote and, get Joe Manchin to do it and threaten to tank the COVID bill if they didn't put the minimum wage in there. So there you go. They didn't do it. The Democratic Party doesn't work for you. I need you to know that. But here, this is from NBC News. Biden signs executive order raising federal contractors' minimum wage to $15 an hour. Here we go. So President Biden signed an executive order Tuesday that raises the minimum wage for federal contractors and tipped employees working on government contracts to $15 an hour. The raise from $10.95 an hour will begin in January, and agencies must implement the measure no later than March. Biden has signed a separate order to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour for federal employees. The new order also directs federal agencies to raise the tipped minimum hourly wage to $15 an hour by 2024, and to ensure that tipped employees working on federal contracts earn the same minimum wage as other employees on federal contracts. So this is pretty good. Now, I will say the last time there was an increase to the minimum wage on federal contracts is when Obama did it. He raised it to $10.95. Now, Obama did not raise the minimum wage for tipped employees. He let them go. He said, we don't need you. I don't need to raise your minimum wage. Now, he raised it for federal contractors. So there's a difference here. Biden is raising it for federal contractors and tipped employees. So there's a bit of a caveat there. Now everyone's kind of thinking and asking him like, "Hey, come on, what's the sub-minimum wage? The sub-minimum wage pay, right?" Because there's obviously going to be one, right? And Biden's saying like, "No, there's no sub-minimum wage. Everyone gets paid the same." There's no exception to the law, right? So there's no exception to the law. If you earn tips, you get paid the same as those who don't earn tips, but they're federal employees. Whether you work in the halls of Congress, you work at the Capitol Visitor Center building, you work in the Library of Congress, wherever you work that's counted as federal property, you get to have a $15 minimum wage. Now, he also did it for workers with disabilities. Now, you might be thinking, hey, man, this is absolutely amazing. And yes, you're right? Like, this is great. But it must not help a lot of people. Because if I'm going to be honest, at first I thought that. But then I thought, well, there's about 800,000 people working for the federal government, I think. Right? So I had to look it up. And it turns out it's 390,000 people. 90,000 people. So that's a lot of people in the federal government that are now not going to live paycheck to paycheck. Well, they probably still will because of the expense of everything these days. But there you go. He's helping that many people. Now, there was a time when like, if you remember on his way out, like when Obama was on his way out, he did a bunch of executive orders that were good. And like, for example, freeing non-violent drug offenders, commuting Chelsea Manning's sentence, and then, Trump came in and they took her back into prison. And one of these minimum wage, or one of these orders included raising the minimum wage to $10.95 an hour. So that was on his way out. But Biden is doing it early on in his administration. So you gotta remember that he's doing it early. Obama did it late. Like, oh, I'm going to act like I'm progressive, but I'm not. Okay. And he didn't raise it to 15. It would have been boss as fuck if he had raised it. But there you go. Now, another thing is that, like, in his announcement, here's what I liked. Biden actually said there's going to be no impact on the on taxpayers. Taxpayers are not going to have to pay anything higher. And people are like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I mean, where are you going to get the money from, huh? I mean, come on, you're raising the minimum wage. What the hell? What do you have? Why are you not going to? How are you not going to raise taxes? He's like, well, it's gonna pay for itself. What are you talking about? It's just gonna pay for itself. I don't have to pay for anything. What are you talking about? Because see, here's the thing. It's got reverberating effects through the economy. It improves a lot in the economy. This is sort of like a bottom-up approach. Instead of the Republicans' trickle-down economics, this is a bottom-up approach where you're giving a lot of people a lot more money, and what you're getting here at the end is, the end factor is, hey, they're going to end up spending more, right? Because instead of a supply and demand, there's a demand, and now there's a supply, where you give people at the bottom more money, and then they spend, so you give them a raise, they end up earning more money, they spend more money, and it impacts the economy, right? Because they start spending in their local economy. That's essentially what Joe Biden is saying. And that's kind of gangster. If I'm not gonna lie, that's a boss ass move that he's doing. So his argument is, I don't have to pay for anything because if I give people a $15 minimum wage, they're gonna buy more in our local economies and in our national economy, and you're gonna be able to it's gonna offset the cost because they're paying more into the system, right? Now we don't know if that's the case, right, officially. But, I mean, come on. Common sense will say that. You give people a lot more money, what are they going to do? They're probably going to develop savings accounts. They're going to spend more. They're going to pay their rent, which impacts the landlords, which impact the banks and the mortgage companies. They're going to buy more from the local grocery store, which impacts the billionaires. They're going to buy more cars. They're going to buy more, they're just going to buy more for their families, more clothes, more laundry soap, more dish soap, more whatever it is, more household appliances. Now, there are some left-wing policies that do have this result. Like, for example, free college, right? Now, what does it cost? Like $60, $80 billion? But it pays for itself because if you give free college to people, right, people get better jobs when they get out of college. They get paid more. They spend more money, and that impacts their local economies because now they're paying rent, they're buying houses, they're participating in their local market, creating the GDP growth and all of that. That's what happens, right? Like you're giving college students the choice of, okay, now I gave you free college. Now go and spend in our local economy, right? Like go and help us. And that's what's going to happen. If you don't have them burdened with student debt, they might put a down payment for a house. They might go on vacations. They will purchase more from supermarkets, from technology outlets like Best Buy and Apple and Android and Amazon and Facebook. What if they ever do? Right, from Facebook, they'll start businesses. So you get the whole thing. Now, Biden did cave on the minimum wage, right? If you remember the last reconciliation bill that I just talked about, the left didn't force the vote, and then they hid behind the parliamentarian who's some low-level official staffer with no power whatsoever fucking ever, and they hid behind her and said, oh, we can't do it because she said no. She said no. So you might be making the argument, Jason, this is great. It's great. He's doing it for federal contractors and workers and tip employees and all of that. Why can't he do it for us? That's a good question, and I have no good answer other than Joe Biden is lazy as fuck. Because I had thought, well, he doesn't care about the minimum wage. He's not going to raise it. He's all talk and no action. Well, this kind of makes you go, okay, he raised it for federal employees. So you can make the other argument, which is maybe he is for it, but maybe the fight on the federal side of it for everybody in the country, even though it would help millions more, hundreds and hundreds of millions more people, he thought, no, too daunting. Okay, that's bullshit because he's asking for $20 billion more for the military, $20 billion more. Now, that's not daunting because Democrats and Republicans are corrupt and they love the military-industrial complex. But I don't buy that argument. If you're going to do it here, you got to do it everywhere else. So, the next test is going to be, can he actually do this? Can he pass the minimum wage? And then it's going to be, are you fully getting out of Afghanistan? Or are you going to leave the federal contractors and the special operators, the special ops people, and all of that. Are you going to do that, or are you going to get out? Now the CIA thinks you're going to get out wholly because they're writing hit pieces on you, Joe Biden. That's what they're doing. But again, this is him raising the minimum wage for federal employees, and you got to give credit where credit is due. Yes, good on Joe Biden. I'm glad he raised the minimum wage for federal employees. So if you work for the federal government, you're gonna have and you have a federal contract, you're gonna have $15 an hour. That's just plain and simple. But again, the fact is he caved before, and he needs to not cave anymore because it's getting so stupid. The fact that he's not doing it.